it's a unique target for marketing, and it's not for everyone.
He doesn't do anything about brand messaging. Okay, compare that with all the rest of the startup people.
There aren't a whole lot of competitors doing the same thing. There are people that are copying, that are now having to figure out their brand messaging because they're wanting to differentiate between ChatGPT. You at least need to have a starting point of what is the perception of your brand inside and outside the company. And you bring that together and you synthesize all that information and you do a competitive analysis. Make sure you're not repeating what your competitors are saying.
We help supply chains thrive.
That's great messaging.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I saw your website.
Okay.
I saw your name. I saw your logo. I saw you. It all look black-ish branding and they all look expensive, including you. With that, right.
This video is brought to you by us, SCMDOJO. We provide awesome courses, guides, best practices for supply chain community.
Hi folks, welcome to one more episode of Supply Chain Show. So today we have a special episode because we don't actually have a supply chain person to talk about supply chain. We have one fantastic marketing individual and she has been consulting, advising a lot of startups. So most of my clients and most of our supply chain community have a supply chain startup. So people belong to supply chain startups. So today we're going to talk about what supply chain startup has to do to send their brand messaging so people know about the solutions and basically they can use them, right? So today we have Katherine. Katherine is a creative director and founder of Golightly Creative, not David Lee Creative. So with that, Katherine, how are you? So just tell us about you. Your name is great. So yeah, quick introduction, please.
Thanks for having me on. I'm Katherine McCleery, and I am the owner of Golightly Creative. It's kind of it's a marketing and creative agency, highly focused on marketing strategy through brand and messaging. And I have an interesting and unique experience in that I've been marketing, for 11 years, but for about 6 or 7 of those years, it has been focused on supply chain and procurement tech. And so I feel an affinity towards these industries and the technology that we're seeing out there. And so it's a unique target for marketing, and it's not for everyone. I think it's one of the harder areas to market, and so yeah, I love it. I love this niche, and so last year after ending my last corporate marketing job as a brand director, I decided I've got such a deep knowledge and understanding of this area of the market. I'm going to do something. I'm going to do a little bit more with it. So I started contracting and working individually with companies instead of just as a director for one company. And I have learned so much. I started this business in January, and it has been an incredible experience getting to speak with founders directly and hearing exactly what startups in this space are dealing with right now.
Right. So let me share my experience. I think we both are, I'm not a marketing professional, but being a startup founder myself, learned quite a bit by doing blogging and digital marketing for the last 6 years at SCMDOJO. So what I see when startup comes in, they say, "Oh, you got a big community. We want you to do this, content, blog, sponsored posts, whatever. Fine, I'll talk about it." Then I ask them about, okay, what solution you're offering. They actually start telling me their features, right? And I'm saying, I'm not asking you what your features are. What I'm asking is, what is the problem statement? What are the audience, right? And from that audience, what are your solutions? So we can make people understand the problem you're trying to solve. So we can sell the solutions you're offering. Again, I get the same repetitive answer. We have this AI-based demand forecasting simulation. Okay, but how is it going to help me? Anyway, so this is one of the challenges I see with a lot of supply chain startups is even explaining them. Guys, explain me simplistically. Recently somebody sent me a line. They have thrown in orchestration, artificial intelligence, machine learning, VUCA word in one paragraph. And I'm thinking, you literally throw in all the buzzwords, and I don't understand what you're doing. So that's the problem I see. But you have been doing it full time. You have a lot of experience. So I want to hear from you, right? So what are the common challenges you see when you do consulting?
Oh man, you nailed it. Messaging. So in essence, what you're asking them for is their core messaging as a brand. And there is product messaging that is important. You need to have a way to communicate what your product actually does. But if you can't communicate why you're doing it and who it helps, and why someone would choose you over somebody else who may have the same features, and that's the challenge. Like when you're asking them, okay, but why? What's the difference? How are you going to help my listeners with your product better than your competitor? And there is this loop. It's a common issue in SaaS marketing, whether you're in supply chain or not. But I do feel like supply chain and procurement, tech especially, is like they're still catching up a little bit. There is this gap that it's a messaging gap is what I call it. And it's a struggle to talk about why you're in business and connect that to, that challenge with your, target audience. When all you're doing is talking in very technical terms about what the product does. Great, the product can help you get a job done, but if people aren't recognizing or seeing themselves in the mission of why this product is in existence in the first place, because most of these startups are created by people that are in the field and they came across a massive challenge or were sold on somebody else's idea of a challenge that they faced, in supply chain. And they're like, I want to fix this, or I want to change the way this business is done. So it came from a real need. And if you can't connect that original need to other people that are facing the same issues, and you're just talking about, well, you get, analytics reporting. Okay, great. But what do you do with that? And why is it important? That's where messaging can really, really tie in that why behind the what and the how. And if you skip that part of it, you're always going to be competing on features, and you're probably not going to win. People want to do business with people, and if your brand doesn't relate to people, you're going to fall behind, and your competitors are going to keep edging up against you.
You're right. People do business with people. So if you're not emotionally or trying to correlate with them, it's not going to sink in. So your last pass on the messaging of the brand is clear, right? But again, eventually, as a startup founder, you want to sell your product so people can use your product. That's the messaging. Now, I'm gonna give you a true story, which is not a good story, but true story with me. So I was invited by Optimal 22 in New York. They paid the ticket. I was a keynote speaker giving a SNOP class. This was my first US. I do a lot of conferences and master classes in Europe and Middle East and Africa, but I was never invited in USA. So I went there, pretty good, enjoyed it very much. But what was interesting is this. I went there and I saw a lot of people which I talk on LinkedIn, right? So which I chat with them, commenting and all that. So a lot of people knows me. But then 3 or 4 people, not just one, 3 or 4 people, they come and said, "Oh, great to see you. Love your content. Love your videos. Great stuff. But what do you do?" Honestly, they ask me, "What do you do?" Right? And I'm thinking, if they know me, I work with SCMDOJO. Why they keep saying it? What do I do? Like, is this way of asking how you make money? Okay, maybe it's the same thing. But then I realized the issue is, whilst the brand messaging or content, marketing is pretty good for SCMDOJO, we hardly talk about our product. We don't even tell what we sell, actually, how we even make money, right? So that leads to my second question, right? So what is the difference between the messaging of the brand and messaging of the product?
Right. Okay. That's a fair question. So your brand messaging, and I kind of hinted towards this earlier. Your brand messaging is why you're in business. Why, beyond making money, like what is the vision? What is the change that you envision in the world, like at the highest level, your vision, and what is your mission to make that happen? And so your product then comes in as the tool that you use to get, your vision, to get to your vision. And so that brand messaging is going to be very emotional, and it needs to appeal to people. And you can focus in pretty well on a certain niche and really try to tie something in to the mission. That's really how you get your foot in the door. People aren't going to consider your product if they don't know your brand, or have, somebody else recommend it. And so then your product messaging does need to be very, it should be tactical. It should tell people what your product does, but you can still marry that with brand messaging, with your tone, with the words that you use. If you're using really technical jargon, you're going to narrow down your audience so quickly. And with supply chain technology, usually it's not just people in supply chain that are going to be using it or that need to be decision makers. And so your messaging really needs to be understandable by, finance or operations. So the words that you use, the tone that you use, and part of your brand messaging really should come into your product messaging as well. And I think one of the biggest mistakes that I'm seeing with product messaging is, number one, you can't really tell what the brand is about through the product messaging. That's the first problem. But the second problem is it talks about in the moment. What you can do right now with this tool is X, Y, and Z. But then it doesn't talk about what that will do for the company, a month from now, 6 months from now. What's the end goal? How can you help people visualize who they are going to be, who their company will become with your product, not just what you can do right now in this moment with your mouse and clicking through and using this tool. Yes, you can pull reports. Yes, you can have visibility. But what does that mean? Does that mean that you're going to, have a better, ESG footprint? Like really understanding what is the impact, and that impact that needs to be part of your product messaging, because people need to know that it is not just about sitting at a computer and using a tool. They need to understand that you're actually contributing to this larger vision and mission.
Yeah. I mean, I've read a book called Brand Stories, and I think in that book it says very simply that if you are humans want to survive. The only way to survive is I don't want to burn my calories. If I have to burn my calories, I have to think. That means you are killing me. I don't want to do that. I want to live longer. And if you're telling a story, people like the story because it's resonated with people. If you're just if you're sending me a message which makes me think harder, I'm going to switch off because it's against my living moral. Now with that, let me slightly challenge you a bit, because you emphasize strongly on the brand messaging and its correlation on the product messaging. And if the product messaging does not have a brand messaging, it is also no good. So it's basically, what is the essence? How it's linked with the mission? Now, take a recent example. What is the best recent example where a product has actually become a brand itself? ChatGPT, right? It's a product which was good enough, right? Not good enough. It's for me, it's the iPhone movement, right? I would call it the fifth generation or the fifth industrial revolution, in fact, right? So after IoT, I would call it fifth. So now AI is becoming, normal, even though a lot of people don't know what LLM means or what is language model means. They don't give a monkeys because they just know how to use ChatGPT. And that's what the iPhone movement is. The product was so good, even though the founder said, Sam himself, yeah, but product is not that good. So he is saying himself, but the product is that good, is the 10th biggest website in the world right now. Right. So he doesn't do anything about brand messaging. Okay. Compare that with all the rest of the startup people. But the thing was, ChatGPT has solved the problem very easily. So how you see about that?
Yeah, that's a great example. So ChatGPT they're a product-led growth type of strategy with their product. So that means that you are allowing users to experience the product, and if the value prop is there, and it's it's so simple to use, and it's so easy, and there's just wide access. It doesn't need a whole lot of brand messaging. And guess what? There aren't a whole lot of competitors doing the same thing. There are people that are copying, that are now having to figure out their brand messaging because they're wanting to differentiate between ChatGPT. So if you are a category creator and you have an open source platform, I can see how you wouldn't need a lot of messaging. Now everybody else that's coming into this category, they better have some differentiators and some value props that ChatGPT isn't covering. But this is one of those really cool moments in time where we're seeing not just a category being created, but an entire business model shift. And it's just going to be like one of those words that becomes a household name, like, oh, are you going to ChatGPT that? It becomes a verb, and it becomes just like a part of how we do business. And I could, that's a whole nother topic. I love using ChatGPT, but that was a really great and thoughtful question. When you're a product-led company like that, and it's open for users, they're going to do the marketing for you. And now you see so many other businesses popping up saying, okay, now you can, use ChatGPT, but use these prompts, and, download this guide about how to write the best prompts to get what you need out of ChatGPT. So it's like created a whole waterfall of businesses.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm sure you're far too young than my old self, but I feel lucky actually to born that time I was born, because I have seen a TV which I literally used to. So my grandmother used to say, "Can you change the channel?" So I was like a remote control. So go and change the channel. I have used VHS tapes and cleaned the
Yeah.
head of the VCR, as we used to call it, to make sure we watch a movie. And from then I've seen the DVDs, I've seen the CDs, I've seen the internet, I've seen that revolution, the whole world, web or web 2.0, now AI, now mobile shift, and now we're literally talking about robotics. So I'm thinking within 40 years of my life, I've seen so much technological revolution which people probably don't see in 300 years before me or 300 years after me. So just a point, a reflection, I don't know. Now, which leads to one of the revolution I've seen is how, and actually I challenge this to I'm a big critic of SAP and Oracle and all the big boys in the ERP. The reason I'm a big critical, because I think even you Google right now why ERP sucks, you will see my blog at number one. And I've explained the reason why it sucks, because they have single-handedly slowed down the technological innovation in the supply chain space, because they have the power, they have the reach, they have the audience, they have money, they have everything. Because they were so greedy in their license and the partner, they did not do it. Why I have to go in and download the data out of my SAP and do the analysis? Why the system is not telling me what should be my made to stock, made to order, right? Should be telling me some predictive analytics. No, to do that, I can't do it in SAP. I have to buy a different software. Why? But in a similar time span of last 20 years, let's call it post-internet era, fintech has gone drastically changed. I mean, you are a marketing student, right? The marketing 15 years ago which is pre-digital world, a graphic designer to calligraphy because my uncle was, and overnight he was become redundant because he couldn't learn the graphic design right. So right now, nobody needs a designer because you got Canva. Canva can do everything, right? You don't need a videographer. So the point I'm making is following, that with this revolution, which has happened much faster in digital marketing, which happened in fintech, do you think it should have, I mean, now supply chain is waking up, right? How they take this advantage? I mean, you are into you are essentially a more or less called a tech marketer, because you know analytics, your brand messaging, how they can accelerate this innovation of marketing in the supply chain space. That's my question, basically.
And my answer is going to be a lot simpler than you think. I think the principles of good marketing are not changing, even though the space around us is changing every day, and the tech stacks are changing, and people are pushing through and innovating. The secret, though, is talking to your customers and understanding the words that they use, what's important to them, how they talk about their challenges, and listen to them when they say, I wish I had this, and say, okay, to solve what problem? Because you can take all of their requests and build that into your product and serve them better. But they may not know that there's a different way to achieve that and more. So go to your customers, and don't do it once a year. Do it every quarter. It could be a simple survey. It could be in your quarterly business review. But if you are not actively speaking to your customers and listening to your prospects and what they're looking for, like having your ear on the ground, even as a marketer, it's one of my most favorite things is to listen in on sales calls, or to really like dig into a company's analytics and seeing what kinds of keywords are bringing people to their website. If you're not listening and you're just trying to find the latest and greatest trendy way to market or where to market, of course, webinars were a huge hit at the beginning of COVID, and they're still a great tool, depending on who you're marketing to. But if you're not actively listening to your customers and hearing them say, we need this, or this is great, like, here's how we use your product, and this is what it's doing for our company. If you have no idea what people are saying and how they feel about your brand and the product, there's no way you're going to be able to attract more great clients. So you have to listen in order to get that messaging just right. So closing that gap between who your company really is and how the market's in helping startups in this space is understanding the perception, the reality of how your customers view you and use your product, and getting that as close to your actual mission, vision, and how you talk about your product to the outside market, so that you can draw in more people like your best customers.
Right. So that's fine. You talk about messaging, you talk about talking to the people, understand. Now, is the cold calling is still, maybe it was a fashion, not anymore. Mostly social media these days, right? For business professional, B2B, LinkedIn is the place to be. We all agree on that, right? But I also see in Facebook couldn't make it. I don't think Twitter made it, unless you're in journalism, couldn't make it. So we're talking about supply chain folks, right? And I even did the poll between LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. I think 87% was like LinkedIn, followed by Instagram, actually, right? So how you see which is the a most suitable way to listen to the customer that you said, on socials?
It really depends on what your product is and the problem that you're solving, and who it, the age group and the demographic. So
You're talking
obviously
supply chain people. Supply chain.
Yeah. Well, but within supply chain, there are, younger people, there are, middle-aged people, and then there are people that are kind of heading out. And so I think overall LinkedIn is going to be your best bet if you're looking for brand awareness and getting your content out there. Where I'm finding a lot of value is in communities. So I belong to a couple marketing communities, and it's on Slack. And I'm sure there are other tools that people can use, but really connecting with people, like-minded people that are dealing with the same issues. That's been great for me because there are technology partners that do come and do a webinar on, like, they'll ask, what do you guys want to learn from, what are the top 5 things you want to learn this year? And then they'll start bringing in other companies to help educate. So I'm finding a lot of value in that, and having the community decide how we want to interact with brands. So if you're a supply chain startup and you are not involved with a community or an education focused partner, put that on top of your list for reaching people this year, because people want education. They want your expertise. If you have a really unique selling point for your product, if you have a unique vision, if you have learned a lot, and that's why you've got your product out there to help a very specific use case, you need to get in front of people that would also benefit from that. And like you said, you don't want to talk about your product all the time. You want to talk about how you can tackle these huge challenges. So I love to go to a webinar that is specifically something that I need help with. And if it's sponsored by a product that could help me get there, great. But what I'm after is the education. And, eventually, when the time is right, when the budget's right, that's going to be the tool that I look at and compare when it's time to make a decision. And that would be my biggest piece of advice for any startup right now.
It's good. That's pretty solid advice. Thank you for that. Last 2 questions, quick fire, let's call it, right? So there was as you said, podcast, big time. And I think the appetite is dying a bit. That's what I think. You can disagree. Then I think, not podcast, sorry, webinars, right? So webinars was in thing. Everybody was doing a webinar. I did as well. And in fact, my attendance gone from 200 at one point during COVID to now hardly you get 50, 60 people if you're lucky, even though you can work hard to get it. Realistic numbers, right? Then podcast was a hard thing, and we started podcast, and I started in 2019 July, I think. Then now every startup has their own podcast, which is I think the good idea, especially from the brand messaging perspective. So my question is, being a marketer, do you feel being abundance of this podcast and webinars, how you differentiate yourself? Because everyone will do it anyway. You should do it. I mean, there's no way you shouldn't do it as a startup. But how you differentiate?
It has to be value first. So if you're doing webinars just to have something out there, a piece of marketing, a piece of content out there, people are going to see through that and they won't see the value. So if you're not providing something that people want, if you're not speaking on topics that are, that matter, that are applicable to people's jobs, if you're talking about something that is already, really common and not, new and fresh, that's going to be a problem. So don't have a webinar just to have a webinar. Do it because you know that there's a need. People are asking for it. You've got a really dynamic speaker who's got a lot of experience, and do it because you're truly wanting to share that knowledge. And it goes from there. If people can't show up live, fine. that should not be the reason for your webinar. Your reason should be wanting to educate people. And if they need to come back and watch the replay, great. But
Yeah.
I still find a lot of value in listening to podcasts and listening to webinar replays. I listen to more podcasts now this year than I ever have, because I like to always have, my AirPods in, and, the first few hours of my day are fueled by podcasts. And sometimes I'll get in and replay a webinar. So finding people, finding a way to get your message out where people are. So not everybody listens to podcasts. Some people prefer to come to like a digital event, but making sure that you are in tune with what people want for your brand, and making it about value for them and not value for you. I think that's the biggest differentiator.
No, that's fine. I think how we can define value, and this is what we try to do, even in our show right now, is I think listening to you is a value itself, is a lot of good advice there. And as long as even somebody listen to it whenever we're going to post it, even later on, I'm sure it's going to help them. Now, with that, what is the one tip or 2-3 tips you want to give for the right brand messaging for 2023 latest?
Okay. So if you don't have formal messaging,
how can brands nail their messaging in 2023? Yeah, just to be precise.
Yeah. So listening to customers. So when I actually go through a formal messaging exercise, I send out a survey to people in the company, founders, everybody, and I send a survey to customers. The answers that you're going to get are going to be so different. So you at least need to have a starting point of what is the perception of your brand inside and outside the company. And you bring that together and you synthesize all that information and you do a competitive analysis. Make sure you're not repeating what your competitors are saying. That's like the number 2 issue that I see is your tool is very similar to somebody else's, and you look at their website and you're using a lot of the same words. So make sure that your messaging is true to what you're hearing, the tone and the words. Make sure it's authentic to your company, and you're not just using what you think, will sound good. So, and to do that, you have to listen, and you have to really take in feedback from your customers and understand. So it's taking the time and staying in tune with that. Don't just set it and forget it. Like, messaging is not something that you just do once and every 5 years you may go back to it. It's kind of a living and breathing thing as your market changes. So your go-to-market strategy might change because your customers change, or something shifts in the market. As those shifts change, you should be able to adjust your messaging to tune into that. And if you've never done a messaging exercise, that's going to be a really hard thing to do. And you're always going to be chasing after, what the right thing to say is. So if you've done a messaging exercise, you can use that template every quarter. And that it's just very simple. Understanding what your customers are saying, what your people are saying, understanding your competitors and what they're saying, and making sure that your brand message is authentic to your mission and vision. And if you're doing that every couple quarters, maybe twice a year, you're going to be in good shape.
That's good. And that's why our message is very simple. We help supply chains thrive. And how we do that is by giving knowledge, best practices, tools, and experts. So if you take all of it, you will improve your supply chain. Simple, right? Now,
that's great messaging.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Endorsed by the expert. Yes. Okay. I need to read more marketing books. Now, so your main customers are supply chain companies, startups trying to hire you, right? Correct?
Right.
How are they going to find you?
A great way to find me is on my website, golightlycreative.com. And on LinkedIn, you can find me just by searching my name, Katherine McCleery. And I will say, At the present moment, I am not taking new clients. That may change, as we close out the year. I'll probably book a few more for next year, but I am only doing strategy calls right now because my client time is claimed right now. However, if somebody has questions or they need advice, you can book a call with me on my website for a strategy session, and that would be the easiest way to get some help right now.
Okay, so Catherine is in high demand, and some things are in high demand and they're expensive, rather, right? So there's a message there that, and if you see Golightly creative branding is all black and reading, and she's wearing black. And one thing I know about branding and black, so if you want to make sure your brand is expensive, you do black, right? I have studied enough. Yeah.
That's interesting. It's, I like high impact. So black and white is, and I have that kind of like electric, lemon color in there too. I go for high contrast, high impact, simple, classic. If you think that looks expensive, I'm all right with that. But
no, that's my assessment.
I really
is a brand perception. So I saw your website,
okay.
I saw your name, I saw your logo, I saw you. It all look black-ish branding, and they all look expensive, including you. With that, right? with that, you know what? I really love talking to you. Thank you for sharing for your advice. Again, thanks to quick story how we connected. This is how the social media works. James follows me on LinkedIn. We ended up collaborating. We made a course. He posted something on LinkedIn saying, "I want to thank all my friends and family, the dog, my mother, father, and these guys for helping me." I do. So James is a founder of procurement tech.
Procure tech.
Right? Yeah, something like that. Anyway, he's famous in procurement. And then I found Catherine there. I dropped her a message on LinkedIn saying, "Yeah, you sound interesting. Let's talk." Right. So we jump on the call. Catherine gave me a couple of good connections I'm working with. So I said, I think you sound very interesting person. And, I think your advice will help a lot of supply chain startups, which we, promote as well. Right. So that's how things work these days. So thank you very much. And any final words before we say bye to the people?
No, I appreciate, you reaching out and taking that step. You guys, LinkedIn is incredible for networking and getting your personal and your business's messaging out there. So you never know what's going to come your step. And I think what you're doing for supply chain and educating people and providing just value beyond value is incredible. And I'm honored to be here chatting with you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Honor is all mine. Thank you for listening, all folks. So hope whatever we do here, you like it. Again, like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next episode. Keep it simple and keep it real. Ciao.